Hello and welcome to another Iron Edge webinar. This is going to be a discussion from us, the Iron Edge BI team. My name is Daniel Villarreal, and joining me are...
I'm Christian Denison.
And Greg Bounce.
Yes, and we formulate kind of the senior data analysts here on the BI team over here at Iron Edge. And today we'd like to introduce just a quick topic that's going around right now. You may have seen a lot of articles floating on LinkedIn, even on your TikToks that you scroll when you say you're working. But ChatGPT is a very, very hot topic right now. And there's, a lot of discussion going on about whether ChatGPT is going to be replacing our jobs as data analysts, or if, it's just going to be completely replacing entire business units. But we're here to say that that's very unlikely in our current climate. And here at Iron Edge, we actually believe that ChatGPT is going to be a very useful tool for our productivity in terms of our work roles. For example, here at Iron Edge Business Intelligence, we offer a service that we like to call BI as a service. And what that means is we offer a lot of mid-sized to small companies BI tools and help to assist with their Power BI development, as well as some other development as it relates to back-end architecture and general BI services. We do consulting from as simple as building your reports for you to guiding you on your entire implementation. And what that means for us is we have only so many hours in the day that we can assist with a lot of our clients in terms of building reports, finding solutions to issues relating to data quality issues, and building Power BI reports just to be able to get something in front of our clients so they can help us get to where they want to be eventually. Now, one of our main skills that we look for on our team is how can you be productive on your own? And recently we've gone through a string of hiring a lot of new analysts. And although their technical ability is one thing that does make a lot of people shine, we really look for a specific skill that a lot of people on LinkedIn or your typical business journals may not take into heart too much. And that is what we like to call Google foo. And when we talk about Google foo, we're really just talking about the ability to sit down, figure out what your problem is, and be able to use Google in a way that helps you get to the solution a little bit more quickly. There's a lot of people out there that may not have this skill, and you may find yourself Googling your problem and not finding a solution for 1 to 2 hours. But here at Iron Edge, one thing that we believe makes a data analyst shine is the ability to solve the problems by figuring out how to ask questions to Google and kind of manipulating your searches to maybe leapfrog into the solution you're looking for. So today we have Greg joining us so that he can lead us into a conversation about ChatGPT and how it relates to creating a more functional workflow and more productive workflow for your Power BI development. Greg, now I don't have a lot of experience with working with ChatGPT. One thing that I've kind of seen online a lot is the fact that there's a lot of sensationalism related to people talking about ChatGPT and the fact that it can write an entire application. Now, when I hear that as a relative skeptic, I kind of think that there may be a lot that people aren't letting on in terms of the fact that this code is AI generated, and it doesn't really seem like you can do much with a simple file that the ChatGPT algorithm is able to spit out. In what way does ChatGPT actually provide any value to someone in a technical field?
That's a great prompt into the topic. Yeah, you're right about there's a lot of sensationalism, and you really have to wade through that to see, depending on your role within an organization, how can this be a useful tool in my tool set, right? And I think one of the best ways it can be used is to speed up your development and to increase your production. You can, I think anyone, especially when we're talking about Power BI as an example, we're developing reports in Power BI. Every report might have something new in it that you've never seen before, but you might know how to start, and this is where the tool really comes in handy. You can feed it a situation, maybe you even know a DAX function that you want to use, and you're trying to isolate certain data, you're trying to filter data, you're trying to sum up data in an unusual way. and just feed that information, and then ChatGPT can generate the code for you. And if it's not correct, it's going to get you likely going to get you started in the right direction.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, like one thing I really struggle with, and I mean, we experience it all the time when we're working together on reports, is we all have our own way of working with DAX. As an example, one thing that I know you've always done is use cross filter function, whereas I like to use the use relationship, or kind of figure out a way to leverage lookup in a way that kind of mimics that exact same behavior. Do you think that ChatGPT would be able to at least contextualize how to use the exact, like, the types of methodologies that you use in terms of asking it something like how to even use cross filter or treat as an example?
Yeah, I think so. It's not just for writing code, right? You can feed it general prompts, even so much as like explain the difference between two DAX functions for me, where you may be a little confused, or maybe you can spell out a scenario for it and say what's the appropriate DAX function to use in this for this data model.
Pretty cool. I mean, what is it even like working with ChatGPT though? I've seen a lot of people on TikTok, especially, using it in a way that they basically only show me the result, but what I'm really interested in is everything they're not showing at the top of the screen. It looks like there's a pretty long scroll bar that is kind of showing that there's a little bit of conversation happening before they're actually showing me the result. That makes it seem like a much more powerful tool. Is there like a skill involved with being able to write prompts just the way there is with Google Foo, as we call it?
Yeah, absolutely. There will be trial and error, right? There's going to be times also that you might try to use the same prompt or what you think was the same prompt that helped you before, and suddenly you might get something completely different back. And that is definitely one of the limitations with it. And you have to kind of learn to work with it. And something that might work for one language might not work as well for another language in terms of programming languages. So that's something else you have to kind of keep in mind when you're using it as a tool to help you develop.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense, especially when it comes to a relatively new um, beta application that relies on artificial intelligence. I mean, it's evaluating just like the way I ask my Google Home to turn off my lights, and sometimes even if I use the same phrase, it'll say it doesn't understand me because it's processing each and every request separate from the last time you did it. Now, do you think you could show us a few things on how to use ChatGPT and kind of guide us through how to even form some of these prompts?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look. All right, here we are at ChatGPT's home screen, and I've logged in with my account. And one of the most interesting things about ChatGPT isn't the code writing; it's actually the prompts. So I wanted to show one that I was inspired by other prompts I see online, and kind of asking it to set up a scenario. Just ask it to act in the role of a Power BI developer. I go clean up my typos. All right, so pretty great stuff. So much more than I ever would have thought it would have asked. I would have thought it might have asked just a couple of prompts, but asked a lot. Now I'm just going to answer just a couple of these, and we'll see what it says. Once again, I think ChatGPT can read through my typos, but let's just make sure. All right. So just lots of interesting information you can get from ChatGPT. But what about something a little more practical, right? We talk a lot about DAX and Power Query, so let's ask it a DAX question. So fascinating explanation. I really think that this is a better explanation than I could ever give a junior data analyst who was asking me the same question. Uh, so I think this can really be helpful for, again, for that learning curve. So let's go ahead and head back and talk about the next segment. So that last demo was a great look at prompts and how we can use ChatGPT to get more information about Power BI or use it to kind of inspire ideas on how to use Power BI as a Power BI developer. But now let's get to something a little more practical, and that is, of course, writing code. So I'm someone who I always write better in Power Query in M when there's something to start with. I'm going to ask it to write an M function for me. So what an interesting way that the code was created. And I have run this before, this exact prompt before, and it did a little different this time, but the end result was still almost identical to the first time, which is always an interesting part of using ChatGPT. Now, I would say if you are someone who is a beginner in M, this should be you not easy to read, but I think you could follow along, and that's what's great. I think these are a lot of steps. I think I could probably make this on a little bit fewer steps, but the logic is there. It's clear. It's easy to follow. It comes with an explanation, and even better, it might teach me how to do something similar, but not exactly the same. But of course, if I wanted to, I could ask ChatGPT, and sure, it would generate something else for me to follow. Now, as we've already discussed a lot in this webisode, is make sure that the code is correct. You want to test it out. You want to use it and then look and see. In this case, we want to say, is it correctly identifying weekdays versus weekends before you would put something in production? Now, let's go ahead and look at another feature, which is something that is just fun to demonstrate with ChatGPT. I think this is everywhere, but I still am just kind of blown away with it. And that is how ChatGPT can add comments to code. So we can say, add comment to this code. I'm just going to paste a DAX measure from a report I have that looks at Jira for issues that we track and enter. So you can see this is a total issues measure. So this measure was to show completed issues in Jira that are tracked. And I think what's so interesting is how it comments the code, again, different from each time. I'm going to go ahead and copy this code and put it in a notepad file so you can see it easier. So now I've copied the code into a notepad file and we can see the comments a little more clearly. And I think this, again, for a learning perspective, this is great, but also a lot of the comments that it adds to DAX code is good enough to production. If I were handing something to a client, would I hand them exactly this commented code? Probably not, but I would do this first and then edit this and tweak it. So again, focusing on using ChatGPT as a tool to save you time and make you more productive, I think this is one of the areas where it really shines. All right, so we showed in the last demo how you can use ChatGPT to write Power Query and DAX code, use it to comment your code. But I guess this moves into the next logical step I mentioned earlier was the trial and error, and also the accuracy that you might accuracy issues that might be produced with the code. This is also part of the sensationalism with ChatGPT, right? Is it producing valid code? Is it correct? Is it something that you want to just copy paste and just trust? And I would say no, you don't. You want to check and make sure. And that's where it really comes into be more of a learning tool and a tool to boost your productivity, and definitely can't replace you because it definitely can create incorrect code.
Yeah, I mean, it really speaks to not only Power BI development, but development as a whole. I mean, one thing I mentioned to a lot of companies that we're starting out with initially that, you know, there's not really a one size fits all development approach when it comes to Power BI reports. I mean, one thing that's crucial is an intimate understanding of your data model in terms of being able to even create your DAX measures. I mean, in one report, I may have built a data model that allows me to just use a simple sum wrapped in a calculate with a plain filter slapped on the end of that calculate function. But then we run into issues in other reports where I've got multiple fact tables where the dimension tables have to kind of figure out how to move through those fact tables. And it becomes really convoluted. And I can imagine ChatGPT's efficacy kind of ending right before we get to that point, especially with more complex projects. Um, you know, I can really see an opportunity for me to start using it, especially like what I mentioned earlier, in terms of being able to just understand how some functions in Power BI work a little bit better. I know ChatGPT is building off of a knowledge base that there's a lot of implementations and code snippets out there in terms of how to use a lot of these functions. And if I can at least get a sense of what the syntax is for a lot of functions that I don't use in my day-to-day, I can definitely make good on it because I at least have the experience that I can build off of to implement them in a better way.
Right, right. And the way that I kind of see it is very similar to Tesla's autopilot functionality, right? You still have to be attentive and awake, and you can't just let it go on, on its own devices. And I think in general, it's more of like it can definitely help you kind of boost your production as a whole and speed to market with your code, like Greg kind of alluded to earlier. But we have to realize this is still like very beta in terms of AI. I mean, for example, like right now, this recording is basically regarding GPT-3, and I think they're still developing GPT-4, which is supposed to be significantly better than this GPT-3 engine. And although I don't think it's going to be the perfect data analysis tool just yet, it's definitely one of those things that we need to keep in mind and make sure that we're obviously kind of like learning, working with it so that we can kind of have an idea of should the AI become really good, we don't get replaced.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like what my father-in-law told me when he introduced me to ChatGPT a couple months ago, where I kind of brushed it off and said, I don't think I could really find a use for it in my day-to-day. And he was like, well, you should probably figure out a way to use it, because if you don't, then someone is going to come along and be able to use it better than you can. And so I'm definitely looking to start using it, at least in a way to replace some of my Google Foo activities, to say the least.
Yeah, for me in my kind of day-to-day, I think leveraging ChatGPT, particularly for DAX patterns on more advanced type of functionality, I think would be really useful. I haven't really gotten into testing that just yet. I'm pretty nascent to the software myself. So this has definitely been kind of a good learning opportunity.
I think a great way to kind of phrase it is, you know, there are times that you've asked me for help on a couple DAX measures, and I'll send you just a rough outline of what I think the code would look like based on what the facts you've told me about your data model. And I don't hear from you for another 2 hours, and I check in, and seem to be good enough of a jumping off point for you to kind of perfect the code. And we've both had it both ways, and same thing with Greg, where we just kind of put together a pattern, figure out how to make it work for our data model. And I think that's a great analogy to what ChatGPT can offer. If I'm not available, or if you're not available for me, then this may be a good way just to rubber ducky some ideas and get some code on the line.
Right. And I'd be really impressed if we can one day use ChatGPT to do any time intelligence using fiscal weeks.
I
Because
think
that's the bane of my existence.
even though this conversation has definitely turned things around for me, I'm probably still going to stay skeptical on that, because I mean, even we have a little bit of trouble with using time intelligence in Power BI.
Yeah.
But one thing that you mentioned that is kind of interesting is, they market this as ChatGPT 3 and GPT 4 is going to be coming out. It sounds a lot like a product to me, which means, obviously right now we're on the forefront of it. There's a lot of hype still to be generated. But obviously this is going to be a product that is on the shelf for some big player out there in the future. And with that comes a price tag. I'm kind of wondering, do y'all have any idea what, the pricing is going to be? Not necessarily just right now, but, do you see any kind of pay model that may start emerging with tools like this?
Yeah, I think the one of, as you mentioned, as of right now at this recording, that's they have, there seems to be a promise that there will always be a free tier with its own limitations to how busy the platform can get, how quickly it might return results, and I really, yeah, how reliable the platform will be, not by the quality of what's returned, but by the up and down, the nature of heavily access resources. So they are talking about a pricing tier, and I saw $20 a month being thrown out. I mean, every person is up to their own. It'll be interesting to see how companies want to subsidize this for their developers. If people will just be doing it themselves, maybe even uh, because they feel like they are even embarrassed to use it, which they shouldn't, because it's just another tool in your toolkit to help you do your job better and more effectively. So I think a lot of people will sign up for it, because kind of starting out, I don't know if we covered this in this call, but just no one's get left behind, right? So that's and that's what I think spurred a lot of this discussion that we're having right now, is maybe I should take a look at that. It's not just the fact that it's in the TikToks, it's on the Twitters, it's on YouTube, it's everywhere. It's because we realize it could be a very valuable tool.
And I really think the one thing that I just can't get over is the scope of how useful it can be for so many fields. I mean, going back to the point and kind of fusing it with that one, as a product, companies are paying for tools like Visio for all of their users. Chances are you only need to use Visio once to maybe 3 times a month when you're presenting some type of tools, at least for technical people like us. But there are other people out there that need to use it for, general planning or project management. And one thing that I think is really cool about ChatGPT, in terms of being a product that potentially organizations will be able to pay for all of their users, is that it's not just for the technical people. I mean, for example, there's a lot of people talking about generating copy using the tool, or, coming up with ideas for party planning is another thing that I've even seen. It's just a great way to help you think outside of the box without having to have another person there, which I don't think enough people see the value in or really talk about enough. I mean, there's a lot of language and influencers out there who like to talk about thinking outside the box, but a lot of people don't really know what that means when put into practice. And I think we'll at least, see a skill set come to emerge that leverages ChatGPT in a way to help you just break your typical patterns of thinking. And I think that's really invaluable in not only technical fields, but a lot of practical fields out there as well.
Yeah, and I do agree with that too. I think in general, businesses have a vested interest in kind of looking into leveraging this as a tool moving forward, and just not just like you said for technical teams, but kind of across the business as a whole. I guess the only caveat I would kind of say with that is in the current form, it's not necessarily super reliable. I think we kind of saw that in the demo. And a big reason is because even on the website, it gives you a warning saying like this data may be inaccurate or insufficient, or and sometimes I've read a few blogs where people were saying that ChatGPT just makes up stuff out of nowhere when it doesn't know the answer. So you have to kind of do it, with that little caveat. So when you do use that in a commercial setting or for your own like technical use in code, for our example, it does necessitate some domain knowledge so you can know, that it is accurate. Well, that's time for us today here at Iron Edge. Let us know what you think in the comments about ChatGPT, or if you have any other questions, or even if you think, how it's going to affect our industry moving forward. Let us know in the comment section below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you're new to our channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.